My biggest challenge is actually when I left the service and learning how to be not an intelligence officer. My name is Anne-Marie Lambert. I joined the service in 2000. I started as an intelligence officer, and I was with the service from 2000 till 2014. There was a program at the time when I was doing my master's degree, and you could apply for a federal government job. And they said, oh, CSIS is interested in you. And I was like, what's CSIS? Because, not a lot of people at the time, this is 2000 era, knew what CSIS was, probably the same as today. So I filled out the application form, went through the screening process, took about a year, and got the okay. I got a position as an intelligence officer, but first I had to do some French language training, and so I moved to Ottawa and did French language training, passed those exams, and then started into entry training. You start as an intelligence officer, but the intelligence officer position is twofold. It's an analytical position and it's an investigator position. So when I joined, you always started as an analyst first. So you did your entry training, which was 13 weeks in Ottawa, here at HQ. And then you went into an analyst position. All the information that's gathered in the regional offices funnels back into headquarters. The analysts in headquarters analyze the information, distill it into reports, take information from the other regional offices or from overseas, and then you basically create reports for the federal government's consumption. I was assigned to Toronto region as an investigator. So the intelligence officer position, investigator edition, my time was in Toronto. So basically you're assigned to a country or an area or a group, and you're essentially just going out onto the street and you're collecting information with respect to threats to the national security of Canada. I was an investigator on the Iran desk. My background for university is biochemistry and criminology. So because of that biochemistry background, I worked mainly the counter-proliferation area part of Iran. So weapons of mass destruction, missiles, chem bio weapons, nuclear, that sort of thing. Essentially what you're doing is finding people to talk to that will provide you with information that will fill intelligence gaps that the service has. So potentially we're looking at Iran and their nuclear weapons program. So you're looking for people who could potentially talk to you about Iran's covert nuclear weapons program, for example.
Do you remember the first source like that you approached? How do you approach somebody like that?
Well, they're not a source when you approach them.
Well, a person that you think could be a source.
My first interview, you mean?
Yeah, your first interview. Tell me about that.
Oh my gosh, I was so scared. So nervous, so scared. I moved to Toronto having grew up I was born in northern Manitoba, grew up in Saskatchewan in a very small town, went to university in Saskatoon, went to Vancouver for school, and then to Ottawa, and then moved to Toronto, which is an entirely different place to live. And I remember driving to my first meeting, and it was, this was like 2003, I think. And so you had those big map books, and so you're flipping through the pages because your road is going here, and then it's like continued on page 167, so you're flipping to 167 to try to get to. So I had this whole route mapped out so I wouldn't get lost on the way to my first meeting, and I think it was out near the airport, so trying to navigate and then trying to be there early, and I think I was like an hour and a half early because I was trying to be early, but then misjudged how long it takes to get anywhere in Toronto. And everybody has kind of their little spiel that they say at the time that they meet someone. So, hi, my name is Anne-Marie Lambert. I'm an investigator with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And then you have your spiel about what is CSIS, and you want to say it in a way that people would understand it, so a layperson would understand what CSIS is. And I had all my questions written out on my little note. We had these little black notepads, and I had all my questions written out on my black notepad. And I remember I worked around for about 4 years as an investigator, and at the end of like 4 years, I didn't write out questions anymore because you kind of just know what you want to ask, and then the flow, your questions go from the flow of the conversation.
So did you have specific information that you were looking for when you went to meet with this person, or was it a general interview to find out what you might be able to get from them?
Both. You might have information that's been provided to you from another source or from another interviewee or from headquarters. So, information that came from overseas or information that came from another region about, this person knows this. And so you're trying to confirm that, corroborate it. Or you're trying to add to that information, or you might be going out because they're affiliated with this university who has ties to a covert nuclear weapons program, for example, and you're trying to figure out, well, what do they know or who do they know and what use that would be. My biggest challenge is actually when I left the service and learning how to be not an intelligence officer in an employment world. So you leave the service, you have, in my case, 14 years of work experience, and I went to interview for a job, and they asked me about some of my skills, which I could talk about some of my skills, but I didn't have a lot of examples of things to be able to show how I could be effective as someone who's not an intelligence officer in a private company, for example. So it was difficult navigating that. CSIS is a very insular work environment because you don't really talk about what you do to other people. And in some cases, you don't even talk about what you do to people that work in the same area as you. So there could be a case that only one person and the supervisor know about, not the 6 people who are working in the same area. You move a lot, so I moved 3 times with the service. You make friends with people who are in the service because you feel this kinship to them. And so you kind of drop other people out of your lives because it's difficult when you're moving and you're not able to talk about what you do. So leaving the service is difficult, and I kind of wish there was like a deprogramming program for people who leave CSIS, just to help them get started, because I had no social media, I had no LinkedIn when I left, and then you're trying to navigate those areas about like, what can I say, what can I not say. I only recently disclosed that I worked at CSIS on my LinkedIn when I joined the Edmonton Police Commission, and I had been out for 10 years, I guess. So only at that point did I actually kind of publicly acknowledge where I used to work. And a lot of people still don't acknowledge, or if they do, they just say like Public Safety Canada, and if you know, you read into it, and if you don't, then you don't know exactly what they did.